Hi, this is Scott Quimby from Computer Systems Integrators. Today we're going to take a little time and we're going to talk about KMS, and we're going to talk about what's next in KMS evolving into a true Active Directory-based authentication. So let's begin. Basically, KMS stands for your Microsoft Key Management Service. It's an activation service, not necessarily a licensing service. Microsoft doesn't track how many KMS activations there are in terms of what your license count is versus what you bought. It just says this is a valid license and it was activated. We use it because once we get it set up, KMS is quite easy. It's quite mindless. So we'll go through that. Requirements for KMS. We'll talk about the configuration, verification, volume activation tool. If you have retail licenses, you go to Best Buy and buy something, that's not this. And we can't really take those into the world of KMS. Those are consumer things, not enterprise things. Same thing, if you have OEM licenses, you get a Dell laptop with a preload OS. That isn't part of this either. The only thing that's volume licenses is either Mac, multiple activation key, or KMS keys. Now, Mac is perfectly fine. Mac activates once. If you have less than 25 PCs, Mac is your way to go. If you are having machines that will never come to your domain, never come in the district, then Mac is the way to go. The downside of Mac is it's a manual process to put the keys in, and you're limited to 3 activations. And so 3 activations can be very painful in terms of imaging. If you're doing sysprep and building your own images, Mac is really painful to try to use because after 3 activations, the image is dead and must be thrown out. And as you're trying to get your perfect image, you generally need more than 3. KMS, basically the rule of KMS is the workstation or server that's, or Microsoft Office license that's doing KMS must see the KMS server every 180 days. If you don't have that condition, you should use Mac. You need a minimum number of 25 PCs to get KMS to work. Until you have your minimum numbers, and I have a screen of that, KMS isn't going to work right, even though it's set up right. That's very frustrating and often where people get turned around. The number of licenses, it's kind of whatever you're bound to your agreement. KMS starts with Office 2010, 2013, 2016, and there's unlimited activations, which means in terms of doing imaging and sysprep, it's great because you can treat it like XP. Just do whatever you want to do, and it'll just work. When you take a machine out of the box, decolon set up the OS or decolon set up Office, by rule, that has the KMS client key preloaded without you putting a key in, which should teach the Office or teach the operating system to automatically go out and find the KMS server and activate. So nothing should be required other than activate. If you're doing virtual desktops like VMware View, you really have to do KMS if you're doing things to make dynamic pools work. Operating system imaging, we just talked about. 1 activation key makes life nice. Now, one of the questions, if you're not really familiar with KMS, you're inheriting your environment, or you don't know what people have done to you, is where's my KMS server? Do I have a KMS server? Do I have more than 1 KMS server? So here we're looking in DNS, and DNS needs to be Microsoft DNS that your workstations are pointing to, right? and we look in the main DNS zone, which I blanked out for this client location. And what we're doing is we go down to underscore TCP, and at the bottom you see where it says underscore VLMCS, right? And if we look there, you see there's a server listed. I blanked out the names, but it's DC something. All right, that's the KMS server. You really don't need more than one KMS server. So if you see multiple underscore VLMCSs on this screen, what that tells you probably is somebody messed up and they didn't understand KMS licenses and KMS servers, and they installed KMS licenses to other servers or workstations. And probably you want to clean that up. Now, how do you clean that up? Well, you basically, the easiest way is, I'll show you in another screen, the KMS default client licenses. Go get one of those, go to the device in question, put in the default license again, activate with that. That'll make it back to a client, not a server. That should clean up DNS. So we're going to have that screen later on. All right, requirements for the KMS host. Windows 2008 R2 or higher, really. What you need to get this going is you need a certain minimum count. So if we're doing server OSs, we need 5 2008 R2, 2012 or 2012 R2 OS licenses to get KMS functional. If we're doing desktop OSs, we need 25, 7, 8, 8.1, or 10 OS licenses. The interesting thing about the 25 is whatever your server count gets deducted from the 25. So if I have, say, 8 servers, I have 25, a need of 25 workstations. 25 minus 8, I need 17 workstations to get KMS to turn on for workstations. Office, I need 5. It has to be solid DNS. It really needs to be Microsoft DNS to make those entries we saw. And I need a legit KMS activation key off your Microsoft licensing documentation. Now in the bottom right, I'm showing you a DOS command, which is the manual way to activate. cscript slmanager.vbs /ATO is activate. So I'm trying to activate in this screen a Windows 7 professional machine. And I get an error, and this error is very common, and it turns people around a lot, which is the software licensing server reported that it could not be activated. The count reported by your key management is insufficient. Please contact the system administrator. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we're actually talking from the client to the KMS server, so that's good. But you haven't achieved these numbers on the left. So you haven't achieved the 25 yet in this example because it's a desktop OS. So therefore, we're not going to turn KMS on yet. People get all turned around on this because they do KMS and then they say, oh, it broke and it doesn't work and something's wrong. The reality is you just have to keep doing it until you get to the count. And then once you get to the count, once the 25th machine is activated or attempting activating, what's going to happen is all those machines that failed with this message here will automatically activate and it'll just turn on and it'll work. But lots of times people see this error and they don't realize that I'm talking, I just don't have the count. And then they say, oh, I'm broken and something is severely wrong. So that's not the case here. So what happens is KMS activates the host via Microsoft. So we do the activation one time on the KMS server. It gets published in DNS. The clients query DNS naturally. And if we have the right number of machines already activated, then it just works. And once every 180 days, the machine in question, or the office in question, has to see the KMS server. So it has to be inside your network in order for it to work. Now, KMS works, I don't have a slide, but KMS works on port 1688. That is the KMS port. By rule, the Windows firewall blocks 1688. So if you do not have a group policy to turn 1688 on, you may have problems where you've set everything up right, but KMS is not working because of 1688 being blocked. By rule, a non-domain joined machine is going to have 1688 blocked. So just realize the importance of that port to making KMS work. I don't have a slide on that one. I apologize. All right, so here's some commands from DOS. I'm going to show you DOS. I'm going to show you the GUI. The DOS often is faster and more helpful in getting errors and stuff. So you can go into Windows System 32, cscript space slmanager.vbs space / will show you all the different commands. The most popular command is, do slmanager /IPK space and your KMS key. That's how you assign a key in DOS to a KMS server. Now, you can ask about what's going on with the next two sets of things. slmanager /DLV or DLV all or /DLI and DLI all will show you all the license information, the status information of the KMS server. The difference between the command and the command space all is all will show you all the licenses. So you want to supply the 2008 R2 license, you want to supply the 2012 license, you want to supply the 2012 R2 license, you apply to Office 2010, 2013, 2016. It'll show all that stuff and what's going on if we have the all command. The big one is this slmanager.vbs /ATO, which is activate. Now that I have the key assigned to the KMS server, I need to activate. And it should come back pretty quick and say it's successful. That's it going to Microsoft and saying, I have a valid key, Microsoft approves me, and we're just going to go from there. Once it's approved, we're golden once we get our counts off that list. Now, if it doesn't come back and you know everything's totally righteous, what we do find, and those of you on the call today who are working with untrusted BOSes, we see this a lot from OU BOSes. They have a Microsoft Campus agreement, which they share across their region with their component schools. And a lot of those schools have set up their own KMS servers, as they are entitled to do. But Microsoft has seen the number of times the KMS key is used, and so sometimes what we have to do is call Microsoft to get them to, tweak the database to allow us to bring up another KMS server. It isn't any big deal. I've never had a problem. You just, if you're in that scenario where you know everything's right, you got a key in that type of scenario, you just call them and tell them, and they'll reset it, and then the activation will work fine. But just be aware of that. If too many people have used that bring up KMS server with that key, you may have to call Microsoft just to kind of prime the pump, which Microsoft will do. All right, so this is the /DLV command, right? And it's very instructive. It says we're licensed. It shows you the end of the license number here, the last couple digits at the top, hard to see in this shot. It says the current count is 50. The port is 1688, as I said. It's published in DNS. And then it says right now, since this is a brand new activation, that nobody's talking at anything. The count has to get to the levels that we talked about on that page, 5, 25, 5. And once it does, things will just start working if we're activated, or we have legit machines or Office licenses to activate. However, the weird thing about this, and there are a lot of weird things, I admit, but the weird thing about this is that the count only will count to 50. And after 50, you could have 10,000 machines, and it'll only count to 50. And they'll quit counting. Why 50? I don't know. 25 is the top level. 50 is twice 25. So I don't know. But just realize when you look at the current count, you're only going to, best case, see 50. But until you see what your 5 or 25 or whatever you're aiming for, nothing is going to happen, even if you've done it correct. On the bottom, you're going to see how many requests were received, what's going on, how many are licensed, and the like. The big one to realize is the grace period. Machines or Office versions that are out of grace, meaning they're greater than 30 days without being activated, cannot be used against KMS. So if I'm trying to get to 25 and I have some machines out of grace, I can't use them to get to my 25 count. I first must put them back in grace, and then they can count or be activated. So even if I got all this stuff working correctly, if I have machines out of grace, they will not just auto-activate until they're put back in grace. We'll show you how to do that. There is a GUI tool, the Volume Activation Management tool. It's pretty cool. It discovers all relevant OSes and Office versions by searching the network. You can put different product keys in. You can manage activations, activation status. Cool thing you can do is convert from Mac to KMS, but you have to be able to see the machines to do this. Now, one thing I'll say about Mac is if you put a Mac key on and it works, walk away. Don't bother converting. Don't bother doing anything. The only reason we would convert is because I need the machine license to count against my KMS minimums, right? But if I already got 25 workstations, 5 servers, and I got all this stuff out there as Mac, I'm just going to leave it alone. There's no reason to go through the bother of doing anything. The only possible exception is I'm going to take that Mac image and I'm going to start doing sysprep and playing with the image. I probably do want to convert it to KMS so that I'm not limited to 3 activations before the image dies. But besides that, if it works, leave it alone. This is something that people get really turned around on. I have Windows 7. I want to do KMS. I would never, ever, ever use the Windows 7 KMS key. That would be a disaster. What I would do is I would go to my KMS server and I would apply the highest level Windows Server KMS key I was entitled to. Same thing. I want to do Windows 10. I'd go out and apply the highest level server KMS key I'm entitled to. And the server KMS key does all the lower level server OSes that are KMS aware, and it does all the workstation OSes that are KMS aware. So to do Windows 7 KMS, I would go to the KMS server and apply one KMS server license, say a 2012 R2 KMSC license, for instance, to the server, and then activate that, and that would make Windows 7 do KMS. So people get confused because there is a Windows 7 KMS license, but that's to create a KMS server on Windows 7, not to use to apply to workstations. Very confusing. Again, the capstone, whatever is the capstone, there's a newer capstone than this, but whatever it is, do, and then there may be, from time to time, there's a patch to get the newer KMS key to work. So, for instance, if I had a 2008 R2 KMS server, I might need to apply a patch to get 2012 R2 key to work, and the patch might require one reboot, but it's really no big deal. Really install one KMS server, which we talked about, and we talked about the server key works for workstations. So we talked about this. I'll just leave it for you in the documentation here, the slide deck that you can download, or Lisa will give you. Basically, the KMS host checks in every 30 days And as long as it's gotten an answer within 180 days, life is good. OEM licenses don't count. Machines out of grace don't count. But here's the solution for machines out of grace. Type slmanager.vbs space minus rearm and reboot the machine. That puts it back into grace. And therefore it will count against your 25. It will count and allow it to activate. So that's the command. So if you find you're out of grace, that's what you do. Reboot and life will get better. Once KMS is actively licensing, activations are unlimited. There's no 3 activation limit, and you're dead as in Mac. You can sysprep all day long. No need to delay activation or rearm. Feels like XP. You just do what you want. The pain is gone, even though it was painful to get here. Okay, so now here's the GUI. I've started Server Manager. I went into add roles. I said add volume activation services. I picked that. Blah, blah, blah. Next, next, next. And I run the install. And now you see on the right, there's a volume activation tools choice on Server Manager. Now here's, once we run that, it's pretty simple. I come up, volume activation tool, I select key management service. I type my key into here, and then it activates. So that's the way to do it from GUI versus from DOS. Okay, pretty simple. Now, Microsoft decided to have 2 different sets of commands for KMS for Microsoft Office versus Microsoft Server OSes, Workstation OSes. So Office KMS requires its own KMS instance, server instance, which can be on the same server. I don't see why you wouldn't just have them all together. But you have to deal with it separately. There is a download to get the Office KMS running, which is actually quite simple to do. It downloads, it just put the key in, do you want me to do the key? It just goes out and it does everything. It's kind of nice. But if we're trying to do the same type of manual activation in DOS, here's the command. C:\program files, Microsoft Office, Office in this case 14, but it could be 15 or 16, it could be 64-bit versus 32-bit, whichever version you have, right? Just fill that in. And then we run this command, this VB script ospp.vbs space set host, whatever it is, and then we do this ospp.vbs /atc to activate. So that's the way to activate Office KMS manually. Same thing, if you have Office out of grace, you have to rearm it. And again, you go into whichever version Office folder you have, and you type ospp rearm.exe. It'll say rearm successful, reboot, and then it should count against KMS. This is a problem we see every once in a while. There's this thing called CMID, and CMID is it's kind of a separate identifier. And what happens is when the KMS client checks in with a KMS server, the KMS server looks at the CMID. And if the CMID is the same, then the workstation only counts as one. So you could have 27 workstations, all of which have the same CMID because they were not imaged properly. They would count as one workstation, so therefore KMS minimums wouldn't be met, therefore KMS would collapse. I've seen that happen, right, where people weren't paying attention, and then it came down that they didn't do a sysprep generalize in their image, and that messed up CMID, which messed up KMS, and all of a sudden they just woke up and all their machines said, we're not activated. How do you fix that? You basically run sysprep generalize in your image. There's a knowledge base article there. The other thing is if you're playing with your image and you're blocking the rearm in your unattend XML file for sysprep, and that's not set to 0, it's still set to 1, that will mess it up. Fix those things and KMS won't be a problem. Now these next couple screens, I'm going to just let you read in the handout. It's basically how to track down the machines that have the same CMID so that you can fix that. So again, how to fix CMID, sysprep generalize, or run this OS/pp.vbs space DC mid. Again, by default, all current non-retail Microsoft OSs and Office is natively KMS aware. If you need to apply, if you've applied Mac keys and want to get KMS to work, you need to reapply the default KMS keys. This link here, I'm going to bring the link up. Let's see where it goes. Hold on a second. All right, it's coming up right now. This Microsoft TechNet article, what it does is it shows you all the KMS keys. These are the default client keys. These are the keys that just exist because you did decal and setup pre-activation. And so what you're going to do to fix a KMS mess up where you've misapplied a KMS key to make it another KMS server, or where you have a Mac and now you want it to be KMS to count, what you're going to do is find the OS here, you're going to find the key here, you're going to put this key into the system, and that's going to revert it back to the way it was when you first did the decal and setup, which will then make it magically go out to your KMS server and attempt to activate normally. So that's how it's done. Now, to wrap this up, Active Directory-based activation. You know, KMS is presuming that you're inside the domain, inside the district, and you're visible every 180 days. But what if you're not, right? Well, we said you could use the Mac key, which is totally acceptable. That's activated. I'm licensed. Just leave me alone, and I'll never ask anybody again. But, you know, if you come to our tech talks or SysUp meetings or webinars and like, you've heard Prayer talk about Azure directory, essentially extending your Active Directory to the cloud. And you've heard him talk about domain join machines, where you essentially cloud join your cloud-based Active Directory. Basically, what Microsoft has done is said, instead of just having to rely on this KMS server in district, which is totally righteous, why not make the Active Directory itself activate all this stuff if we have a valid key and Microsoft is happy with us? And so in order to do that, we must have a 2012 or 2012 R2 server as a KMS host. We can't, just to do KMS, I could do a 2008 R2 KMS host, but we must have a 2012 or 2012 R2 host. And then it'll activate domain join computers for Windows 8, 8.1, 10, 2012, and 2012 R2, and for Microsoft Office 2013 and 2016, i.e. the new stuff. So not Windows 7, not Office 2010 and before, all right? So how do we do this? We install the role again, which we're going to just show you those screens again. And then it creates the AD object after it's all verified, and then the act of joining the domain or booting up, it will see the object and life will be good. And every 180 days, the Active Directory-based authenticated KMS needs to see the domain controller, a domain controller to see Active Directory to maintain activation. So here we are again. We do the same exact thing, blah, blah, except now we select Active Directory-based authentication instead of KMS server. It's going to say, I'm going to create this object. Do you want me to go forward? I say yes, and then ta-da. You should see in the event viewer that it created the object in Active Directory to look for. And that's really it. So at that point, you take a workstation, image it, join it to the domain, it magically becomes activated from the domain. Or you install Office 2013 or 2016, it just magically becomes activated from the domain. Now, the older stuff uses a KMS server, the newer stuff doesn't. You can mix and match, right? So there's nothing to say. You can't say, well, I'm going to do this new thing for Windows 10 and higher, but we're going to maintain the old thing the old way for Windows 7 or 2008 R2 or what have you. So, a couple things again in review. Port 1688 is the KMS port. It is blocked by the default firewall rule. So you need to make sure that 1688 gets through. A machine not on the domain is running the default firewall rule. You need to get to your minimum. So the fact that it fails and says it's contacted the server is a good thing, because once you get to your minimums, it will just work. If it says it can't contact the KMS server, then you have something else going on. Remember, you're using the KMS server key, the highest level server key you have, against the KMS server to do KMS on workstations. We would never apply the Windows 7 KMS key to anything, because we don't want a Windows 7 machine to be the KMS server. So remember the grace. In terms of if the machine is out of grace, you have to do the rearm command to get it back into grace so it can count against the 25 or 5 or whatever your count is, and then it will automatically activate. So with that, I hope you got some good stuff out of this. Leave you, how you can find us if you would like more information. One thing we have going on here is the future Tech Talk meeting dates are listed here for the coming school year, and the snow dates for what's relevant. So please make a note of that. If you'd like to attend, please contact Lisa in our office, who you got this invite from, to sign up for that. We have one coming up on October 18th, a little under a month. Also, we have some dates regarding the future webinars. Obviously, we're doing the one on the 20th, but those are the other days we have published to get through the school year, so make note of that. And in the October Tech Talk, these are the main topics we're going to talk about: server management best practice, Windows Server 2016, using the vSphere client, web client, which Microsoft wants us to do, Windows 10 update with the anniversary stuff, wireless troubleshooting, which many of you have asked for. Bob's going to do network access and security updates, including public wireless, and I'll do my tech tidbits. So that's coming up again. If you want to do that, just let Lisa know. And with that, I thank you for attending. I hope you have gotten some good information out of this. If you have questions, what have you, please reach out to us at CSI, and I thank you and have a great day.